This is the Seller Process Podcast, where we talk about the best systems, processes, and SOPs for your Amazon business so that you can regain control of your time, build up your team, and scale your e-com empire.
Hello, entrepreneurs. This is a new episode of our content series called In the Life of an 8-Figure Seller, where we go deep into the business and personal life of successful e-commerce sellers who reached over $10 million in sales. So we can learn from them, get inspired, and apply their tips and tactics to our business. Today, I'm joined by Michael Sirpilla. He founded a financial services wholesale agency with 40 direct reports and built it to a multi-million-dollar business. After that, he partnered in a population health management business and scaled it from zero to $150 million in revenue within 5 years. He's now the CEO of Society Brands, an e-commerce aggregator that raised $205 million, and it's now home of several 7- and 8-figure brands. Hey, Michael, nice to have you here. How are you doing?
Hey, John Marco, it's great to meet you. Happy to be with you today.
Awesome. So I would say today it's a bonus episode in a way, because normally in previous episodes we talked with founders of 8-figure businesses. Some of them still have it, some of them exited, but in your case, you as an entrepreneur in general, you even reached over 9 figures in sales, right? So I want to take it a little bit different spin and also go into your mindset of let's say as a general entrepreneur, not specifically as an e-commerce entrepreneur. But obviously you have a big experience in the e-commerce space with Society Brands, where you guys work with several 8-figure businesses. Actually, you told me that you only work with 8-figure businesses, right? So it's going to be very interesting to pick your brain and understanding the ins and outs of those 8-figure businesses, okay? So now we're going to start with the first few questions I will ask you will be mostly generic questions about the status of the business. So you can refer to maybe one of those 8-figure businesses in your portfolio, okay? So that's just to give people a picture of how an 8-figure business looks like, because maybe people are thinking, oh, I will need to hire 50 people to reach that level. But actually, maybe we know that from you and from previous episodes that it's possible with much less, and so on and so forth. We just want to break those kind of misbeliefs that some people have and just give like a real picture of what an 8-figure business looks like. All right, sounds good?
Yeah, sounds great.
Yes, awesome. All right, my first question for you is, do these businesses that you've been dealing with typically has a business partner, or they are like solopreneurs?
Yeah, so some do have business partners, some don't. Some of them are husband and wife partners, and some of them have different co-founders. It just depends on the situation. And I think that it also depends a lot on what that skill set of the original founder brings to the table. I think that all of us as business entrepreneurs have a certain core function that has brought us into our careers to where we really excel at, and where it makes sense to bring on a co-founder or business partner is when you are missing something that the business needs. And in order to understand that, you've got to be super honest with yourself. You got to put your ego aside and say, hey, here is what I crush it with. Here's what I'm great at as an entrepreneur, but here's the core functions of what a business needs. So maybe bringing in a co-founder would make sense. And that's oftentimes the case when we acquire an 8-figure brand. Oftentimes they do have a co-founder. And more times than not, the reason why they have that co-founder, whether it's a husband and wife couple, which is oftentimes the case, or just two co-founders that are not husband and wife couples, they oftentimes will partner together because they have two different yin and yang personalities or yin and yang aspects of the business that they can add value to that the other one doesn't, and vice versa.
Right. Totally agree with that. And I've seen lots of successful couples, as you said, husband and wife. But a common mistake normally is that there is where partnerships without that yin and yang. So basically, maybe there are two very similar people who partner up, and many times those kind of partnerships tend to fail, right? Because
Yeah.
they're just too similar and they don't add value to each other. They're just the same person. So
Yeah, just to give you an example, John Marco, long time ago, I was in a business partnership, and this was prior to Society Brands. This was a long time back. And me and my business partner added the same value, and we would always clash. And it's not because he wasn't a good guy. It's not because I'm not a good person. It's just because when you have a certain skill set, you have a strong level of conviction as to how to do that thing, whatever that thing is. And what I value at Society Brands, just to speak about Society for a second, is my two co-founders, which is Justin, my younger brother, and then also Sean Doherty. They bring entirely different skill sets to the business, and I bring an entirely different skill set to the business. So it has been a very good partnership for the three of us, just because I have a healthy amount of respect for what Sean has brought. She was a co-founder of a company called Mofi, a CPG brand that she built to $250 million top line revenue. She sold over $1 billion of products on Shopify. So she's got a ton of experience in an area that is very synergistic towards what Society Brands needs. The same thing is true with Justin. He has a ton of M&A experience and mergers and acquisitions, a finance background, accounting degree. That's not a skill set that I bring. So I've been general entrepreneur on various different fronts, but the biggest thing that I've been able to realize is being able to partner with people and leverage other people's skill sets and expertise for the betterment of the business. And I think that's probably one of the best things, that if somebody's looking to start a Amazon brand or an e-commerce brand, they should be honest with themselves. I'm like, hey, here's what I do really well, but I'm not a performance-based marketer. I don't have creative talent, whatever it is, but they have this and then they own that. Be honest. Don't try to do everything yourself, because if you try to do everything yourself, then it might not succeed as well as if you give a portion of the cap table, a portion of the equity ownership to a co-founder. That would be great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking about not doing everything on your own, probably the second most important thing about the business after choosing your partner is your team, right? So let's talk about the team. Normally, when you acquire these 8-figure brands, how big is their team?
Yeah, so it just depends. We focus primarily on direct consumer brands that are doing anywhere from $10 million to $30 million of revenue generally, where most of their revenue is coming from primarily their Shopify site. But we also have brands that primarily sell through Amazon as well. So we have a mixed bag between direct consumer brands and Amazon brands. Generally speaking, to get to a $10 million revenue business on Amazon, you need less people. Normally that's 2 to 3 to 5 people that you have. Maybe it's VAs or virtual assistants that you have. Maybe you have a couple W-2 employees, but normally it's not a large team. If it's a direct consumer brand doing $10 million revenue, you might have 15 or 20 team members, because you don't have Amazon doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So that's how I'd answer that. Depends on a $10 million Amazon seller. Maybe it's 3 to 5 team members. Direct consumer could be 15, 20 team members or potentially more.
Yeah. That's a great benchmark, actually. Yeah, very useful to know that. Definitely Amazon gives you a big leverage. So yeah, very interesting to know that number. And in terms of SKUs or number of products, more or less on average, let's say a $10 million business, how many SKUs do they have?
Yeah, so generally, what we tend to see is a few hundred SKUs, 100 to 200, maybe 300 SKUs is normally the case. There have been scenarios where it's been a lot more, but what we like to see, and this is specific to us, is really SKU efficiency, and we want to see a high amount of revenue per SKU. So we'd like to see anywhere from $50,000 of revenue to $100,000 of revenue per SKU. And there could be exceptions to that, of course. If we're focused on brands that are doing anywhere from $10 million to $30 million of revenue, you can reverse engineer that math to see how many SKUs that an average brand that we would look at would have. I think it's important for brand founders to not just scatter the market with a whole bunch of SKUs, because it's really, really working capital intensive if you have way too many SKUs out there. What you want to do is have maybe a hero ASIN or a hero SKU that is performing really, really well. And then you could really dial in your performance marketing metrics off of that. And you could split test. If you're trying to run hundreds of SKUs right out of the gate, or potentially over time, thousands of SKUs, it's very challenging to really dive into the data analytics on a SKU by SKU basis.
Okay. That's very interesting. And the main reason why I asked that question is because, let's say, a brand that now has, it's in the seven figures and they maybe have, let's say, 30, 40 SKUs. Now they can say, okay, every 8-figure seller has at least, let's say, 100 SKUs. So, okay, that's a benchmark they can take into account and say, okay, I will need at least to launch, say, at least 50, 60 more SKUs to get to that level. So having that benchmark, it's really, really helpful. And what about the average selling prices? Because maybe some people say they don't want to go into very low prices. Some other say they don't want to go to the too high prices. So what's your experience on that?
Yeah, so our average selling price is anywhere from $50 to $100, depending on the brand. Brands that don't have strong lifetime value try to maximize the AOV, the average order value, for the first purchase. So the ROAS could be as high as what they possibly can get on that first sale. As we all know, customer acquisition cost is increasing across the board, whether you're a direct-to-consumer brand, an Amazon brand, you name it. Customer acquisition costs are increasing. So it's important that you really maximize that AOV on that first purchase. And then also, if you have products that are consumable in nature, it doesn't necessarily have to be like consumable to your mouth. It could be trash bags, it could be whatever, right? Something that has to be repeat purchases. It's really important to maximize your lifetime value. Probably seen me. I've been drinking my Early Bird. This is a brand that we acquired. It's an 8-figure brand, and they sell primarily on their Shopify site and then also on Amazon as well. And what we loved about them is, since it's a consumable, I drink this every single day, and which means that I have to continue to keep on ordering more not every single day, but on a monthly basis, however long it takes me to go through one of their bottles that they have. So the benefit of that is what we were able to do at Society Brands is underwrite their cohorts on how sticky their customers are. Here's how much it costs to acquire their first customer. Here's the average order value of what that very first purchase is. And then how long does that customer come back over time? And what is the lifetime value of that customer over that customer acquisition cost up front? And that's where you really are able to generate a ton of value is if you're looking at your lifetime value, if you're looking at your CAC or your customer acquisition cost, you could really dial up and down your metrics significantly. So that's not going to be relatable to every single brand, but if you are household products, as an example, that's normally household products are generally things that you need to purchase more than once. Maybe not a chair, but if it's kitchen products, if it's trash bags, Ziploc bags, we have a lot of experience with one of our brands by the name of the Cleanomic. It's not something that you put in your body, but it is trash bags, various different bags that you can put food into. Those are consumables, and they have really sticky customers there as well. So those are just a few things that would be important for when you're scaling from 7 figures of revenue to $10 million or more of revenue. Really, really understand your metrics. Your advertising metrics matter. especially on Amazon. If you think that you're just going to get there from an organic search rate ranking today, that's not the Amazon environment that we're in today. You've got to understand your pay-per-click advertising metrics and your various different media buying performance metrics.
Okay, I understand. Very interesting. It's also surprising for me to know about that average selling price that you mentioned between 50 to 100, because I guess that's obviously something that works best for D2C brands. Generally on Amazon, I would say that's kind of the high end of the spectrum, right? Normally, maybe Amazon brands tend to stay around the between 15 and 30, $40. That's kind of the average. So you go 50 to 100. So and you're focused on consumable. So that totally makes sense for a D2C brand. And I'm curious to ask you, out of all these SKUs, do they maximize the amount of SKUs by factory, meaning that every brand only works with a handful, or even just one or a handful of factories? Or there is also the case where they go wild and each brand has, I don't know, dozens and dozens of factories they work with?
Yeah, so we normally see for 8-figure brands only a few factories, oftentimes only one. Obviously, there's benefits having a diversified supply chain. At the same time, it makes it very complicated as well. And a factory wants a large portion of your business. And if they can get a large portion of your business, then you could probably get better pricing. So what we normally see for a brand doing anywhere from $10 to $30 million of revenue, whether it's Amazon or direct to consumer, we normally see maybe one to a few different factories, but it's normally not dozens or many factories.
Okay. Good to know. And also that reflects the nature of a brand, the D2C brand, because many Amazon sellers have a diversified amount of products and in different categories, especially. So usually in order to get into different categories, you need to also have different factories, right? But in the case of a D2C brand, normally the brand needs to be coherent and consistent. So most of the time, all the products come from the same factory, as you mentioned. So
Yeah, I
that's
think
also,
that's a fair point.
yeah. Okay, interesting. And I'd like to understand the distribution of the sales in geographical terms, like how many countries do this brand sell into and what channels do they sell into?
Yeah, so mostly US in our world at Society Brands. We're obviously a US based company. So most of the brands that we've acquired are in the US. And we do have some sales in the UK, some sales in Canada, and there's other countries as well that we have some sales, certainly. But generally speaking, maybe 90% of our revenue as a company, and then you can kind of get down to the brand level and say probably close to that for most of our brands, is in the US. As far as channel, it is Amazon and direct to consumer, primarily through Shopify on D2C. Those are our biggest two channels. Society, a majority of our revenue comes from D2C, and about 30% of our revenue comes from Amazon. Maybe 35% of our revenue comes from Amazon. And the rest is filled in with other e-commerce marketplaces, a little bit of retail. We do some sales on TikTok. We like that platform. But the two big ones for us is D2C and Amazon.
Okay, interesting. And I'm curious to ask you, you mentioned retail. So I would guess that reaching that level of sales, some people might be interested into also breaking into brick and mortar, right? So what's the percentage or what's your experience in general about those brands going into retail? Are there many, or are they successful in doing that, or mostly selling online?
So almost all of our brands are digitally native at this point, and not only digitally native, but digital today, even after being acquired by Society. So there's only a couple scenarios where we've either helped launch them into retail or they were already in retail prior to Society brands. All of those scenarios where they do have some retail presence, they were generally direct consumer brands first, and then they were able to make their launch into retail. There hasn't been many scenarios where an Amazon brand makes that leap into retail. It's not that it can't be done. Of course, it's been done many times in history of Amazon or various different brands. It just hasn't been our case for brands that sell on Amazon primarily.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Sounds good. And so let's talk about capital, because obviously it's a very important part of the business. E-commerce, it's a very cash intensive business. So do the founders that of the brands you acquired, did they have to raise capital or borrow money to get to where they are, or even like now when you acquire them, do you finance them? Is an important part the financing help that you give them? Or let's speak about how they manage capital.
Yeah, most of the brands that started off that built themselves to an 8-figure business and then eventually sold to society, they were bootstrapped for the most part, where they just built it from $1 revenue to $2 to $500,000 to $1 million, then just scaled up from there. And we like those scenarios because it really shows that they have done it themselves and they're really focused on the metrics to scale profitably. When you see brands that get to really big numbers that got there by raising capital, the challenge is you could rely on that capital that you've raised and you don't have to focus on profitable ad spend as much. You're just trying to grow top line revenue as much as you possibly can. You see that with the public companies out there that are direct to consumer brands. Man, they're burning cash, but it's because they raised so much capital. And in my opinion, a lot of the brands didn't really focus on the core fundamentals of the business to make sure that it's profitable right away from day one. At Society Brands, of course, we've raised a lot of capital, but we are really, really efficient. We are obsessed with our advertising metrics and making sure that it's profitable advertising spend that our brands are doing. That's number one, is the brands are generally bootstrapped from day one. There could be some scenarios where they raise some capital, but it's normally not a lot. Maybe it's $500,000, maybe it's $1 million, but rarely is it more than that. After they come to Society, yes, we help them with their working capital needs. As we know in consumer, whether it's Amazon or D2C, it's a working capital intensive business. And so we handle that. They have a company like Society that is in a very strong financial position that could weather those storms of volatility, seasonality, all the things that us as consumer businesses, retail businesses, we essentially go through. We are well capitalized to weather those storms, unlike a scenario that is oftentimes bootstrapped. You either need some sort of working capital line, which is oftentimes hard to get when you're just getting started out, and you have capital resources in order to help brands with that.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm curious then to ask you where that money goes after you acquire them. They're already a very established brand. You guys are very well capitalized. You're talking about working capital. Can you give a bit more insights where the money goes, the money that you inject in the company goes? Is it ads? Is it inventory?
Yeah. So both. What we do, obviously, when we acquire a brand, the first amount of capital goes to the seller of the brand, and in order to consummate the transaction. Then after that, we're looking at the advertising spend. We're working with the founders, because oftentimes the case with Society Brands is we keep the founders on board post-acquisition, and then that founder is essentially the brand president, and they are still leading the ship. They're still guiding. We're trying to add value over and above what they're doing, but we're trying to find gaps in the system to where we could add value. The brand president or the founder in their team is oftentimes still running the core business. We're working with that founder, who's now the brand president, to the advertising. Should we be spending more on advertising? Should we look at another channel to advertise on, to build out a more broad and healthy channel mix? We've brought direct-to-consumer brands to Amazon, and we've also successfully brought Amazon brands to D2C. One of our brands that's an 8-figure Amazon brand is now selling $3 to $4 million a year on their direct-to-consumer site, primarily because we were able to bring that skill set. So we started a lot of media buying, Google ads, Meta ads, et cetera, to drive traffic to their direct-to-consumer site. And then also on inventory, we're also looking at various different inventory flows. We obviously have a demand planning team at Society, and we're working with the brand president to see the seasonality on various different SKUs, which SKUs are high churning products, and are we running low? Do we need to order more? Are there some that are slow moving that we have an oversupply? So we're working with the brands to make sure that we're making those important buying decisions, because that is a very important aspect of your free cash flow as a brand, making sure that you're not only buying more inventory, but the right inventory. How does the past predict the future when it comes to your buying patterns? And that's something that we add value to the brands that come underneath Society's umbrella.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Very interesting. I want to give people another very important benchmark, which is timing. Like when you acquire one of these 8-figure brands, normally how old are they? So that it's telling us how long did they take, from 0 to 10 figures, so to 8 figures. Normally, what's the average age of these businesses?
I'll tell you what, it oftentimes happens faster than what you would think. And I'm sure that you've probably seen that as well, John Marco. It could happen as quickly as 3 years, where they get to $10 million or more of annual revenue, not since inception revenue, but annual revenue. Oftentimes it could take 5 years or 6 or 7 years. But yeah, so I would say on the faster end, it would be 3 years. A more probable case would be 5 to 7 years.
Okay. That's a good benchmark. And it kind of confirms what I've heard also from other founders. Okay. That's very interesting. So guys, don't give up because you still need a few years, but it can be very quick, potentially 3 years really fly in this business. And even if it takes 5 or 7, it's still very much worth it if you reach those levels. Okay. Very interesting. So then I'm curious to ask you, once you have one of these 8-figures brands in your hand, then your team takes over. What's the strategy to scale even further? Because then 10 million is just a starting point for you. For many of us would be like the end point, like kind of the dream to reach 8 figures. But then for you guys, it's the beginning. So then what's the goal? Usually, what do you aim at after you acquire those brands? And then what's the strategy for you from the time you take over the brands?
So the first thing that we pay attention to is the unit economics. And that's just such an important aspect of any business, let alone an e-commerce brand, is the unit economics on, is that brand founder focusing on the unit economics on a SKU by SKU basis? How are they performing? Oftentimes, especially on Amazon, what Amazon brands will do is generate these marketing campaigns where it essentially casts a really wide net across a whole bunch of various different keywords. And in the older days of Amazon, that could be a very successful way to scale an Amazon brand, because the average ROAS could be a 4x or could be a 3x or a 5 or 6x or something like that. In today, with advertising costs on Amazon or just e-commerce in general, it's a lot more challenging to do a more broad-based approach on just casting a wide net across a whole bunch of keywords. So the first thing that we do is we look at the unit economics of various different keyword campaigns that, let's call it, an Amazon brand is doing, and which one of the keywords are the most profitable. And maybe some of them are producing a 4x ROAS. And we look at that as a relative value of what their customer acquisition cost is, what their gross margin is, right? We look at the P&L and we see what can a brand afford, what's the contribution margin on that various different SKU. Like we really get the unit economics down, say, okay, this is profitable spend. So let's spend more on this keyword. And then this one over here is less. and it's not profitable, why would we spend money on a non-profitable campaign? We should shut that campaign off, take those dollars and put it towards the campaigns that are working. So that's maybe day one, generally speaking, on what we do is we look at the unit economics and where can we shift the marketing dollars to where it's more efficient. So that's one. Once we get that dialed in on their platform that they're core to, it could be their Amazon platform. It could be their direct consumer website. We don't try to scale them via channel day one necessarily, unless we see this huge blue ocean that they're missing an opportunity on. Generally speaking, we're trying to maximize the value on their own website or on their Amazon, through Amazon if that's their primary channel. So that's like day one. Then day two is maybe there's a geographic expansion to where we feel that it would do, after doing a lot of market research, we feel that expanding into another country could be beneficial, or going to another channel could be beneficial. But first, what's their core platform? What's the unit economics on that platform? And how could we find efficiencies? Not from a cost cut perspective, because that's not really what we focus on from day one. It's mainly on where could we shift advertising dollars around to really maximize profitability and top line growth.
Got it. Okay. So find efficiency. That's the key word there. And yeah, so now that we've covered a lot of the things about the benchmark, let's say, of how an 8-figure business looks like, I'd like to end our conversation with a few questions about like your mindset and skills. Especially, I think it's interesting to dive into your experience, because you don't only have e-commerce experience, but also experience with other kind of businesses, but at a very high level, even at a nine figures. So I think really what we can learn a lot from you is to get like a diverse point of view, because many times I feel like in the Amazon space, people are like in this Amazon bubble where everybody talks about the same things, everybody shares the same tools, and we follow the same gurus, and everybody follow the same masterminds and so on. But I think the real opportunity is into kind of copying the successful habits and tactics and strategies of other industries and bring them into Amazon. So for example, things you're talking about, unit economics, customer acquisition costs, lifetime value, these are topics that are very little known by
Universal.
Amazon. Yeah, but these are universal, for any business. But I can tell you on Amazon, nobody's talking about that, because we don't get as much data about customers. So that's why it's hard to get to those metrics. But it is definitely possible. We do calculate those metrics in my own brand, but it's a very little known topic. So then I'd like to ask you, for example, what are the most important habits that you developed that you think impacted your business the most and your career the most?
Yeah. All right. I love this question, and I love these types of conversations as to where we're heading here. So the first thing is you need to firmly believe in yourself and your ability to do something great. I was not like an incredible student as a kid. I was ADD, ADHD, and I never thought that I could become a successful business person that I've been able to become over my career. But there's one thing that I had, an unbelievable, relentless desire to be successful. And that is the core thing that any business person, whether you're trying to get to $1 million of revenue on an annualized basis, or $1 million a month, or $1 million a week, or $1 million a day, right? Like any of those things are possible. It's not like any of those are not possible. People literally do them. There will be a brand that's launched tomorrow by who knows, that's going to eventually be $1 million a day seller. right? On either Amazon or DSE or wherever, right? It's going to happen. So the question is, will that be you? Do you believe in yourself enough? And part of believing in yourself enough is talking to people that are 10 times further along than where you are in your journey. So maybe your journey right now is you're at $1 million of revenue. Talk to somebody that's doing $10 million of revenue. Maybe you're at $10 million of revenue. Talk to the guy or girl that's doing $100 million of revenue and sit down, have coffee. What you'll find is they're not much different than you. They are not much different than you. The only thing is they had the courage to go out and take ground and take over ownership of, they claimed bigger territories. They weren't willing to put a ceiling over top of them. My favorite quote, John Marco, is by Benjamin Franklin. It says, most men die at age 25. We just don't bury them till they're 70. And when you think of what that actually means, that means that all of us, when we're a kid, we want to be an astronaut. We want to be a professional athlete. We want to be a doctor, whatever. We want to be an entrepreneur. And then life smacks you in the face. And then you're like, gosh, that kind of tames you down a little bit. And then eventually you settle for whatever box you put yourself in that you believe that's all that you're really worthy of. It's not because that's true. It's just because we tend to put ourselves in these boxes. You could look at a Richard Branson who struggled with dyslexia and all these ADHD and all this stuff. It's a multi-billionaire today, right? So it's not just simply the Harvard grads that become the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, right? I think he dropped out of Harvard. But nevertheless, people that are very smart from a scholastic perspective and a more traditional perspective, which is awesome. There's a whole bunch of different ways to get to success, but you need to talk to people that are further than you. You need to be able to use a word called leverage. And I'm not necessarily talking about capital. Sometimes I'm talking about capital, but in other scenarios, you're leveraging other people's experience and expertise, and you're getting them to come along for the mission that you set out. You want to build this Amazon brand, and you want them to co-found the business with you, and you're willing to give them a percentage of equity. They need to believe in that, because that also means they're probably not going to get paid very much initially, right? So getting equity, they actually need to believe that equity is going to be worth something that is going to eventually produce cash flow. So one, you need to believe in yourself. Never stop believing in yourself, because there's going to be a whole bunch of challenges that come your way after you set on your journey. It's literally part of the path to success. And the second thing that you need to do is leverage other people's skill sets and expertise. It's a fine balance between believing in yourself so much to the fact that you become egotistical, you think you could do everything. But then on the other extreme, you don't want to be too much reliant on other people to where you're insecure and you don't have a strong level of conviction for yourself. So it's a balance between those two things, and in leveraging other people's expertise, but also very much believing in yourself. And then maybe the last thing that I would say is just always be growing, always be learning, always be studying new things, always be trying to just be infinitely curious as to how you could better your life and better your business in every single way. And it is the relentless that survive. It's the relentless that build the $10 million businesses, the $100 million businesses, the $5 million businesses, the $1 million businesses, right? Any of those are incredible metrics, just depending on what you want. But don't set your benchmark on what you think that you can do. If what you think your max is you can do is $1 million a year in revenue, I promise you that's not your max. Now, maybe that's the lifestyle that you want, and that is totally fine, right? That's a different thing. But don't set that benchmark because here's my ceiling, here's all I think I could do. You could actually probably do a lot more than what you think that you're capable of.
Great. I can see your passion in this. You can see you fired up with this kind of question. So I loved your answer. And especially when you said that when you encourage people to listen, to speak actually with people who have done more than you. If you're looking to do 10 million, to make 10 million, you should talk with somebody who already did it, right? I think that exchange, it's super, super important. And that's actually the very reason why I'm recording this type of episodes like with you today, or the other episodes that I've recorded in the same kind of series, talking with 8-figure sellers, because some people might not have access to this kind of people that are in this podcast, right? So this way they can easily have or at least listen 30 minutes, 40 minutes conversation with people like you who achieve this kind of results in business. Yeah, I love that answer. So another thing I wanted to ask you then, still in the mindset space, is that were there any books or mentors or particular experiences that strongly impacted your success?
So, a book that I read early on in my career is Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That is a great book. If you want to learn how to sell more products, how to negotiate, how to raise capital, that is an unbelievable book for deal makers, let's call it. And emphatically, throughout the course of my career, I have been a deal maker. That is what I've done, whether it's sales, marketing, raising capital. That's a core value, or that's a core function that I'm able to bring with me, that I've been able to excel at. And that's certainly a book that's helped me realize, hey, what does somebody else want out of the transaction? And it doesn't mean that they can get it in the most direct way that you think that they want it, but maybe there's another way you could deliver that to where you're also getting what you want as well. Because if you care about what somebody else wants, they're going to care about what you want. And the highest level of finance, you kind of think that egos and insecurities and things like that go away. It doesn't. Multi-billion-dollar companies still have insecurities, still have egos, still have all these kind of stuff that we have to deal with as human beings that are living on this earth. So you think that people are just only making strong business decisions just for business sake. Unfortunately, sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes when you're negotiating with somebody, it's more ego driven to where they want to win. And if you could help them win in certain areas while you're winning in all of the areas that you want to win in too, then that will likely work out better than both of you just going head to head at each other. So that is one book that is really, really changed my life. Another one is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. So it just basically is about relentless consistency and how that compounds over time. Every single day, I do generally the same thing. It is not sexy. I do the same thing every single day, and it feels very mundane oftentimes, but I'm relentlessly consistent with those things. I work a lot. I'm not your 4-hour work week type of person, but at the same time, I'm married. I have kids. I have a life outside of business as well, but it's the relentless consistency over time that builds really, really great things. So that's another book. As far as a few mentors, I have an uncle that's been very successful in business, and he was an incredible mentor for me. My grandpa as well. He built a small business in local community that I'm in, and he was an unbelievable mentor for me in a time in my life when I didn't believe in myself, when I was in grade school and high school, and just how all of us kind of struggle with various different insecurities that we may have as we're trying to figure out who we are and who we're going to become. My grandpa and my uncle were there for me. And then also later on in my career, I met a serial entrepreneur that built a $300 million business. And he allowed me to just sit and listen to him. And I just listened, watched him on doing various different deals, on debt recaps, and all these things that I didn't even think that were feasible at the time. And that inspired me to level up and say, wait, if he could do it, I can do it as well. So those are a few examples.
Awesome. Yeah, very inspiring, interesting. And we'll look up those books. I actually read one of them, the Dale Carnegie one. So I'm going to read the other one. So thank you for those suggestions. So my last question for you will be still in this same space of mindset and skills. What soft skills do you believe were crucial in your journey, in your entrepreneurial journey, and how did you develop those skills and refine them over time?
Yes, I would say that Soft skills are persistence and also being results oriented. I know that this is somewhat high level, but it should relate to wherever somebody's at in their journey. A lot of people want to get rewarded for the effort that they put in. And the marketplace rewards you for the results that you get. It's just cold, it's hard, and it's true. This is the results that you got. Therefore, this is the income that you're going to make or the net worth that you're going to have. And that is the standard. One of our core values at Society Brands is get it done. And the line after that is excuses don't build great companies. Effort alone doesn't build great companies. Results do. And it's just being so focused on, hey, what is it going to take? This is the desired outcome. It doesn't matter what you have to do to get it, ethically, of course, but you've got to do whatever you have to do in order to get that desired outcome. And be so focused on that, because I see this in entrepreneurship. I see these in the workforce with employees. Oftentimes, what they'll do is they'll just say, hey, I put in my time for the day, and my time is what I'm doing, and I put an effort in. And if it doesn't succeed, then I put the effort in, so I'm okay with that. The only thing that I'm ever okay with is a result. I either got the result or I didn't, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get the result. So I think that is probably a soft skill set that you should just try to find in whatever business or life throws at you.
Awesome. Yeah, very cool. Interesting. Totally agree with you. So now you've shared a lot. I think we got a very packed episode full of interesting insights. Where people can find you if they would like to reach out. Maybe they want to sell the business to you, or maybe they'd like to help. They would like you to help them somehow. So just share what can you help them with, how can they find you? Yeah, and share anything you'd like before we close.
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. So Michael Sirpilla, if you look up Michael Sirpilla Society Brands, should be the only one that pops up on LinkedIn with those credentials. And yeah, if you're looking to potentially sell your brands, we'd be happy to take a look. Send it to leads, LEADS, at societybrands.com. And somebody on our M&A team will reach out, and I'd love to have a conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much, Michael, again, for sharing these insights. Very helpful. Again, it's another great episode of this series. I'm very happy that we've came up with this kind of series, because every one of you guys that came into this type of a new format of a podcast shared like really amazing insights like you did today. So thank you again, Michael.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me, John Marco, and congrats on everything that you're doing. It's unbelievable what you've built, and keep on growing it and keep on adding value to your community.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much again, Michael. So guys, remember that the key to success is to emulate the best. So take home the insights that Michael just shared with you and take action. Remember, you can find all the resources in the website, thesellerprocess.com. You will find this episode transcription and all free materials that we share in our website. And you will find also links in the YouTube video description. So I hope you guys enjoyed the content today, and I wish you a productive week, and I'll see you next time.
Hey entrepreneurs, I hope you enjoyed the episode and learned something from the interview. If you're serious about creating systems for your business, automating processes and building up your team so that you can transfer the tedious daily tasks in order to focus on more high-level strategic tasks and work on your business and not in your business, I've created a guide for Amazon sellers named Capturing Systems and Creating SOPs that you can find at thesellerprocess.com/systems ebook, where you will learn how to leverage systems and SOPs in your Amazon business so that you can accomplish more by working less, optimize your time, automate and delegate tasks, and reap the benefits of being a true business owner and not simply an operator in your own business. Go download the ebook at thesellerprocess.com/systems ebook and start implementing all the tips and insights that I share with you. And leave us a review or a comment to let us know how the content we are sharing here is making an impact in your business. And have a productive week.